John, I have a comment that on the section that you had real answers, and it was, I agree 100%. As you know, Tom and I have been going to a lot of the meetings, but I think that it was all directed towards the school board, and I think there's one more dot point that should have been on there that says that the Board of Supervisors have to keep their own feet to the fire, that they're not going to approve a budget that they do not understand. That's a huge cop-out, you know, and I don't think anything will change. I mean, the school board could do it perfectly, and if the Board of Supervisors are going whatever, it's not going to be a good thing. So I think they have a responsibility, and I would expect that my representative would not vote for a budget just to get a budget through, and would not vote for a budget that he did not understand completely.
I thank you for that input, and I think I would add to that, that to a degree, from what I've heard, that the school board members should also take that advice to heart and not just agree with whatever's presented to them because they don't understand. If they don't understand, there's a problem there, because anybody that gets on the school board is, I would assume, interested in understanding what's going on, or else they wouldn't volunteer their time. I'm sure they don't do it for the money. I know the supervisors don't. It amazes me that supervisors are willing to work for what they get paid. So they have to understand it. And if you don't understand something, you have to ask questions. Yes?
What you're saying is true, but how many supervisors here tonight and how many school board members?
That's what yeah.
One school board member.
One school board member? How many?
One school board member and two supervisors. I forgot to recognize those, and I apologize. Mr. Lee Mitchell from Snow Creek and Mr. Johnson from Blue Ridge.
I appreciate them coming, but they're the one that's got to do it, and they're not, most of them's not here. So how do we, you gonna go up and tell them in a private meeting what they need to do? Maybe they don't know, they've been doing the same thing for years.
I would follow on with that though, and I see Dr. Lackey and some other interested people, but when you look at the general public out of 58,000, and with some people here trying to get folks to come to this thing tonight, see all the good work that you guys have done, this is what we've got. So we're a big part of the problem. I encourage everybody in here to go home and talk to your neighbors and talk to your friends and say, damn guys, you know, and I don't want to hear complaints in November or at budget meetings if you can't at least be involved enough to ask Dr. Lackey a question or come to something like this or show up at a supervisor's meeting. It's not that much time out of our lives. Right. But we're a big part of the problem. We are the problem, really.
Anyway, we can get this in the news post, some kind of a, what you said tonight, maybe in a small form.
The news post and Roanoke Times are here tonight.
Okay. Are they taking good notes?
Communicate with the supervisors. The voters have to communicate with the supervisors and the board. Yes, Steve?
Question to Ronnie and Mr. Richard. If tomorrow night, this is a public hearing.
Yes, ma'am.
And then you vote the following Tuesday,
Yes, ma'am.
is there a slight chance in hell that the majority of the Board of Supervisors could come to the party and reject this budget and go back to the drawing board before May 1?
I suppose it's possible.
Well, basically, we're spinning our wheels this year, and our big effort is to go out in November and replace the dead wood.
No, I hope not.
I understand what you're saying, but
If it's gonna pass, then
I
we're
hope
lost.
we're not spinning our wheels.
I mean, well, we're not spinning our wheels as far as getting the message out here. But if it passes, then our only objective then is to get new wood in November and try again next year to prevail and get some transparency.
That's the throw the bums out. That's number 3.
Yeah.
Again, there's a certain amount of validity to that because of the 80-20 rule, right? There are probably certain people in those positions
Can you count the 4?
that shouldn't be there. But you also have to work on changing the process. You don't have to wait until November to start changing the process. And to answer your question, if they're not here and they don't hear us,
It's that deaf ear that was on the screen.
that's sad, but it's true. But that doesn't mean that you can't call people and you can't email people and you can't write letters and express your opinion and say, hey, we gotta keep this system running as good as it can and make it great for
I'd like to say something to this point. Change comes, John said it earlier, nobody likes change. There's people that make a lot of money off of change because it needs to be guided and managed and done properly. It's very difficult. Put yourself in this position. If you're a supervisor or a school board member, the superintendent of schools or the county executive, and there's somebody out there telling you, you're not doing your job good enough, we want you to do it better. And you hear that all the time. In fact, if you go to a supervisor's meeting, all these guys hear are complaints. Oh, we didn't like that. Why did you do that? So, what I want to encourage you to do is be constructive in your comments, okay? Not destructive. That doesn't need to be there. We don't need to be to divide and conquer or fracture things. We need to actually confront the problem honestly, look at ways to find a solution to that problem, monitor it so that we make sure we really have a viable solution, and be constructive in what you do. These guys work hard. They don't work for a lot of money. Maybe I'm not real pleased with the budget transparency. That's my opinion. I think if I was on the school board and I was hearing Bill Brush criticize their budget, I would take offense to that. But taking offense and not listening, that's a real problem. You know, that's a real problem. And that's where we need to be constructive and offer solutions, and that's what tonight was about. It was not to say, this guy's a bum, throw him out, or that guy's no good, or that gal's no good. That's not it. It is be involved, be constructive, understand what's going on, and you can make change. And you say, well, geez, there's only 50 of us here tonight? Well, guess what? You 50 have a lot of power. A lot of power.
How about an educational program directed to and specifically for Board of Supervisors and for school board members as a review for this, like this program here, and then ask for their comments?
Well, that's a great idea if you can arrange that to happen.
If they're not interested in coming, that tells you something big.
Yes, it does.
I want to say, I think we got a great bunch of supervisors. I'm not saying throw them out. What this guy said right here is what needs to be done. They need to be educated. They just hadn't thought about this point maybe.
Yeah,
They've always done it this way.
But one of these things, if you hit them with one particular thing, they don't have the big picture, the overall picture of which I mean, it makes such common sense, John, on, you know, what's been presented and how it ties together and the whole 9 yards, is that if they see the big picture, how supportive that we are and where they can go and how to get there, then they'll jump on board, I think.
You know, the interesting thing about what the process John did, we came at it from different perspectives, but we used to do this. John did it as a consultant, helping many companies. I had to do this in the companies that I worked for or was a part owner in. This process that you're talking about, evaluation, you know, this quality process where you have good data, you look at data, you evaluate the data, where you see a problem, you make a change, you monitor to make sure that change is doing what it's supposed to do, and you reward the excellence. That's something that the government invented. The government invented those programs to track their contractors. Now, I'll be the next one to tell you that the government doesn't like to apply those processes to themselves. They argue we're not a business, we're a government, and that's true. But these principles that we talked about tonight apply to government, they apply to nonprofits, they apply for businesses, they apply to you, you know, in your own lives. These are things that are proven, they've been around a long time. And yes, an education program where you could sit down, and I did offer that. I offered to sit down and work behind the scenes to do just that.
But I think now with Board of Supervisor people and school board people making those requests and invitations, that will be more meaningful than you or me.
Yes.
I think your point was, you guys have done this, you've done it all your life. How many of our supervisors has been engineers and worked in these big plants and stuff like this? I work for General Electric, and I've heard stuff like you're talking about now from the big guys, not me, the big guys. And they do it all the time. But how many of our guys has the opportunity to do this?
Well, I don't know, but it's,
I think you're doing
you
this
understand
good.
it's not hard to do. I mean, it is hard to do, but it's not hard to understand.
Right, but they haven't been introduced to it. You guys would introduce it to them in a class or something somewhere and say, hey, look at all this. maybe they can start thinking that
They've been
direction.
to the supervisors meetings, and they have met with the school.
Not in a meeting, you can't go in a meeting, you have to go in a room by yourselves, okay?
We got a couple of folks.
Maybe that.
Mr. James?
Yes, sir, thank you. First of all, as a school board member, Mr. Brush has contacted me, but you haven't, Mr. Lipson. And for you to say that we're not listening isn't necessarily fair. So I want to clarify, I mean, maybe some, yes, but not all. So, but to answer your question, I was a part owner and engineer for 20 years as well in the company. And I know about the 1,400 feet meter per minute rolls you're talking about, the aluminum foil. Understand budgets quite well as well. And one thing I want to say, you know, me and Bobby Thompson got elected at the same time, and this right here is what we envisioned happening. So first of all, I want to say thank y'all for doing this meeting tonight, because I do like to see community people get involved, and it's nice to see that. There's a lot of things that has happened in the last 4 years that a lot of people don't know as well. The transparency is getting better. Is it as fast as it should be? Maybe or maybe not. That question could still be asked. But there are a lot of things, and one thing I wanted to just mention to you, Bill hit it. It's not about throwing bums out and getting bums in. It's about filling somebody out, and I would recommend to anybody that if you want to run for office, you should do it. Commend Bill for doing it. You know, that is what makes America great. Yeah, you're crazy. I can go, but you're an engineer. That's what we are. We are crazy. It's one of the most rewarding experiences and one of the best. Just remember, it's not Smith Mountain Lake. I come from Philpott Lake. This is Franklin County. My house is valued as houses in Smith Mountain Lake, which on my side of the county I don't think is too fair, but I still pay those taxes. You know, so it's what we've got to do together and how we can come together and meet. And would I like to see more on both boards here tonight? Well, yes, I would have, but I am glad Dr. Lackey came, and he did that on his own accord. It was no request by me by any means, or anybody else that I know of. But I do applaud y'all for that. And Bill, I would love to get your numbers. I know you met with Dr. Lackey, and I didn't get to get in that meeting, unfortunately, but I want to look at your numbers and see where they're coming from, though.
Ed, you give me a call,
And
and we'll sit down and over coffee or over numbers.
There we go. Yeah. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
I think, I'm sorry,
Gentleman up there in the corner has been so patient.
Pat Montgomery.
Well, I want to defend our board of supervisors and school board members a little bit. Y'all seem to want to take issue with them as not listening. The first rule of the constitutional republic is you have to educate yourself. You don't want we can't educate our elected representatives. And once you educate yourself and you understand the problem, you have some ideas about the solution, then you need to go hold your elected representatives accountable. You know, but you can't just sit here and say, well, if they do this or if they do that, you're just transferring the blame to somebody else. It's your own fault. Just like the guy said, you know, this is all the people we got here to listen to this presentation. You know, we need more people. You know, it's your own fault for staying at home watching TV or not educating yourself. Don't pass the blame to somebody else.
You're right.
I think Dee Dee has a point, and someone else may have mentioned it as well. This year is probably shot. We're going to approve something next week, and we'll be done with it. However, what I think they could do next week is put in some stipulations. If we're approving this budget, you've overrun in the years, or you've underspent in the years past. We want you this year is to come up with a software program, and I'm sure there's hundreds of them out there. There's going to be millions of school boards all the way around this country that have come up with some software application that can manage this thing with just the inputs and the outputs, as you spoke earlier, John. It's not rocket science. Someone has developed it. It's out there. So the Board of Supervisors, if nothing else, will put a stipulation to say you're going to decrease your budget in years future until you come up where we can understand this and it's transparent and it can be posted to the website.
More importantly, my understanding that the software already exists. It's standard accounting software, and all the Board of Supervisors has to do is insist that the school board provide monthly reports, as they said, on, first of all, provide a monthly spending budget. When they go to the supervisors, break it down by month. Here's what we expect to spend every month, and that's real easy to do because you got history. And then report actual versus planned and the variance, and see how they're tracking.
That's right, and the board of
It's all
supervisors
there.
can put that in this year, to make it
Yes.
happen, starting
Good
with this
point.
year's budget, instead of just dragging this out for another year.
Let me try to be fair and balanced on something. Let me just say one thing. The schools last year, for the first time, put their budget into this, they used the budget module on the program. That's allowed me a lot of insight to see what works. That's step one. We made progress there. The county uses it too. Now, John's been talking about a time phase budget, you know, how much you're gonna spend in July, what's gonna happen in August, what do you think, how do you think it's gonna lay out? The counties don't do that. The county doesn't do that either. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander, is what I'm saying. The counties need to be looking at that as well and saying, okay, we know we're gonna have our big expenditure month is this month or that month. Let's look at it, let's track it, let's see that stuff, so that if we have a problem, we find it early, we know we can work for a solution. And when something's not working, we see it's not working right away.
This gentleman here in the blue shirt?
Yeah, two things. I've heard Dr. Lackey in the past say that they strive to have some carryover at the end of the school year, so they have a contingency fund. It seems reasonable to me. 5 million seems a little bit excessive, but what do you think is a reasonable percentage of the budget for them to carry over?
That's a tough question to answer.
I can't.
But I don't, they can't, you know, they don't want to overrun.
You can't.
They can't spend money they don't have. That's the good thing about local government, okay? It's not like they can't print money, so they got to make sure they come in less. I wouldn't think a 1% or even a 2% problem possibly is not a huge deal.
So
But-
that's like $1.5 million, huh?
Yeah, but the difference is if you're thinking that's what's gonna happen, when you're asking for a new budget appropriation, share that then. Don't share it 6 months later.
Or after a tax increase.
You know, that's the problem. We're sort of out of sync here. You see, if we knew today, if my number was right today, and I'm not saying it is because there's uncertainty in it, but if that number was exact, it never will be exact, but if that number was right, that would be part of the budget deliberation that the supervisors and the school board would dialogue about. Right now, we're dialoguing, that number's crazy, it's more like 350. That's not good. So the more information you have when these guys have to make that decision, this is the most important decision they make every year, is what they're gonna do, how they're gonna spend money, and how it's gonna impact your taxes. They need better
They shouldn't be arguing about how much it is. How much it is a fact.
Right.
And they should determine what that is, and then they can talk rationally about, okay, here's what it is. Is it too much, is it too little? Again, I'm not qualified to answer that. I could if I studied long enough, but there are people much more knowledgeable than me that can answer that very easily. But they should have the facts in front of them. And then when they go for their spending and their proposal, and Bill said should include that, and there should also be a rule that any money that's left over and above what is budgeted goes back to the county, isn't turned back to the school system for even more spending. It should go back to the county and then become part of the next year's budget.
The Board of Supervisors have the option to retain those funds, those carryover funds.
And they don't.
And they don't.
Yeah,
So I don't think that's a school system problem. You mentioned
but it is a problem.
it is a problem,
Yeah,
but it's a Board of Supervisors problem, that's not a school system problem. You mentioned that taxes
It's
are
a county
always,
problem.
always increasing. You know, and ideally, your tax income to the county would increase because the tax base increases.
This is growing, right?
And we don't, as a county, what's the budget this year? $200,000 or $300,000 for economic development?
It's not a lot.
I mean, it's peanuts. And I don't think there's a real will for the county, by the people of the county, to experience economic development that will really increase the tax base. This is an agricultural county with a diamond around Smith Mountain Lake. You start putting heavy industry outside of the industrial park down here on 220, you're gonna reach, you're gonna see all kinds of objections from people.
Brother, you're preaching to the choir. I moved to Franklin County because I love it the way it is.
That's right.
I've had enough big cities.
So, given that mentality, the only way to increase your taxes coming into the county is by raising the damn rates.
That's right.
You know, so why should we gripe about tax rates being increased?
Well, that's a point John and I don't necessarily agree on. I think the counties need to spend more money on economic development, and I think the counties actually underestimate the people of this county. I mean, they think the only thing we can do is work in a factory, or build furniture, or build textiles. We're a lot smarter today. Things have changed. You know, we've got kids going away to school now, probably for the first time in a family's history, and they can't come back to Franklin County and work in a good job unless they get a county job or a school job to do that. And there's people that maybe don't want to teach. So I think we hurt ourselves when we don't invest smartly in economic development and encourage that type of stuff. We need quality jobs. We need quality industry. And it doesn't have to be, yeah, okay, we're only capable of factory jobs or call center jobs. That underestimates us.
And if you
As Bill
continue
said, he's not speaking for me because I don't agree with that, but I agree with what you
But
said.
there's clean industry that can come here, I mean, it doesn't have to be.
Well, but that's a philosophical discussion
We bring more engineers in.
that we could get into and have a lot of fun discussing, but that's not part of this discussion. This discussion is that we are going to have to raise taxes because the county is growing and because inflation is a reality of life. So we are going to have to raise taxes. Let's try and control the spending and make sure that we're getting the biggest bang for our buck.
But if you continue to raise the taxes, the diamond of Franklin County will cease to be a diamond. It will
It
turn
already
in-
is.
It will turn into
It
a
already
pebble
is, I
pit.
should say.
Well, I understand, but it will get even worse. If that's what this county is hanging their hat on, is Smith Mountain Lake, then Smith Mountain Lake will not be that diamond
Dry
much
up.
longer.
And in fact, one second, and in fact, if you continue just raising taxes,
Yes.
what happens? The people that own land and farms and don't have a great income and are just kind of getting by,
It
the
depresses.
taxes will ultimately force them to sell because they can no longer afford to live here. I've seen it happen.
Well-
And then what does that do to property values?
Yeah.
That depresses them even further because a sale like that is a distressed sale, right?
Yes.
And you're never gonna get top dollar for your money, you're gonna get bottom dollar. And then you get into this ugly spiral. So you have to manage the county and taxes and spending intelligently, and that's all we're talking about.
And the spending, to me, is the issue. I worked for the government a long time, and the business of government is to spend money. And the more they get, the more they'll spend.
Yes.
Whether it's realistic, whether it's reasonable, whether it's good for the citizenry or not. And that is one of the my major concerns with regards to government as a whole, to include Franklin County, is that just because these revenues are coming in, we've got this tax money coming in, doesn't mean that we have to spend it just to be spending it.
Exactly.
Well, that's what they
And
did
they
with
need-
stimulus.
Wait.
They got us
They
to spend it, now
that's
they're
right.
running out and now they're broke.
This gentleman played by the rules, he raised his hand, go ahead.
I wasn't prepared to speak, but I was prepared to listen, and I appreciate your presentation. I have to make an exception. I don't think raising taxes is inevitable. And I say that in the fact that I've lived here for 15 years in Franklin County. My taxes have gone up twice the rate of inflation. This cannot continue. The problem is spending. It's like this young lady said in front of me. And if we don't get a hold of our spending, your chart on the school board, the number of students we educate, and I'm not criticizing the educational system. Maybe I am. I think it's becoming more and more expensive to educate the same number of students.
Oh, it is, that one, the first chart that Bill showed, with the growth in school attendance is almost flat.
And the problem is that the state is broke, the nation is broke. Basically, we're not going to be funded by the state anymore. the trend that you showed going down, the school board expenditures are going to continue to go down next year. Next year is going to be a big problem. And I'm on a fixed income, I'm retired, and a lot of people in the Blue Ridge District, of which I am with Mr. Jameson over here, are feeling the effects of inflation just like everybody else. And we're the ones that are cutting back on our expenditures, and I don't see why the county can't do that too. I think it's unconscionable for people who are making $28,000 a year to be supporting a school system where the starting salary is $40,000 a year, and I may be slightly wrong there, for a 10-month contract. And I know they're not getting rich, and I know we have to compete with other school boards around the state of Virginia, but there's 25 applications for every position we have in a teaching position in this county, and we could hire all the school teachers we want. 80% or so of all the teachers coming out of Virginia Tech are not being hired because there's no jobs. Our development program in this county, our industrial development that we all clap about, has been a tremendous failure. It has cost us money, in my opinion, folks. We should just cut it off. It's wasting our, because any industry we get in here, we're going to have to pay for it. Everybody else is paying for it. They have to pay and sacrifice for 10 years of taxes to get an industry to come in here to make cupcakes.
These are the kinds of comments and conversations.
And that's an overall picture. What's going to happen? The Board of Supervisors has to realize that this trend that we're in right now is going to continue to go down. The money isn't there. The Main Street in America is not recovering. If you look at the school system and see the number of children in Ferrum schools that are on the lunch program, you can see poor people. And we're going to tax them more for a bonus for the teachers in the school. That's unconscionable, folks. That's just unconscionable. I don't see why they're in the crowd here tonight.
Well,
to talk about that. So I'm sorry.
No, what you're talking about is the conversation that you need to have at these Board of Supervisors meetings. And that's the purpose, to give feedback to the supervisor.
You get 3 minutes. You get 3 minutes, and I talked to Bobby Thompson, who's my supervisor, last year. I told him there's a lot of anger in Blue Ridge District. Just because they're not here doesn't mean people aren't aware of it and they're not angry. And I sent a note to Mr. Thompson here and to the supervisors who held the line courageously on expenditures, and I admire these men. And here we are, the poor side of the county, and our supervisors are all voting for a tax increase.
So again, what I said was you have to,
for re-election this year, too.
Yeah.
before I completely lose control of this meeting, you have to make sure that you get supervisors on the Board of Supervisors for the county and on the school board that listen to your concerns. Now, I will tell you that the 80-20 principle still applies to what you're talking about. There are going to be people in this county who unfortunately can't afford to support the county. And I don't have an answer for that tonight. I don't know that I'd ever have an answer for it. But I know one thing for sure, that if you have kids that are born in this county and you send them to school, you'd like to know that your kids have a good chance of learning what they need to know to either go out in the job world or go on to college, whatever their choice is, whatever their decision is. And that may mean that the taxes are going to be above what some people can afford. That's a problem. And if it hits you personally, then that becomes a real big problem. I don't have the answer to that. But I know one answer is not to keep cutting services and cutting education until the whole county is on a subpar level, because that's not going to help anybody.
Well, let me just weigh in on this point. Look, schools, when I used to work, I don't work anymore, but when I used to work, and we had a located company office someplace else or something, we looked at several things to locate offices by quality of life, price, cost of living. Schools was up there number one. You cannot invest in schools and expect to grow this economy. Okay? It's an important investment, it's an investment for the long term. And we need the best possible teachers we can get. We need the best possible outcomes for our students. That's affordable. You know, and that's a tough decision to make. I don't know what that answer is.
I don't either, but let me say this. The statistics show that spending money on schools doesn't make a difference.
That's true.
In other words, it doesn't make a difference how much money you spend. It's the people who are running that program, and the people must be good. They're spending money and they're good too, apparently. So statistics don't back that up. Just because we're spending money in the school system,
And nobody,
doesn't mean we have to sacrifice quality education.
nobody here tonight said throw more money at
Right.
schools, which is what you're implying.
But all the meetings we've been to, I have yet to hear at a board of supervisor or a school board meeting that they've cut back in any area other than the one time they had to let teachers go. But what I'm saying is,
So there may be opportunity.
on a daily basis, there
Yes.
could be savings, and like you said, on the dollar bill or the $100 bill, this is just a little place to work. That was over the whole county budget area, but every department maybe could cut back, and it would add up to some savings.
And those, again, are the kind of conversations that you want to have with your supervisors, with the board, with the school board, to get these ideas out. And if the school board had a provision for looking at improving their efficiency, and I'm sure they do to a degree, but maybe there's more that can be done, then if we start getting more bang for our buck, we might be able to cut back in some of these areas. I mentioned 3 of them. Again, I don't know if they're legitimate or not, but I'm sure that if I was in there, I could find all sorts of opportunities for improvement. Not implying that the school board is doing a lousy job. It's just that most educators are not trained in the means of process improvement.
I would like to say that I've had a chance to talk to Dr. Lucky, Ronnie Thompson, and I think we really need to make it clear that we appreciate their listening to us, that transparency is important to us, and when it becomes more transparent, that the word gets out who's pushing that. I mean, this gentleman down here has worked very hard.
Yes, you got it, Ronnie.
And you all have worked very hard, and Dr. Lackey opened his door for some of us, and I appreciate that. We just need to keep it happening and to become more transparent.
I have a confession. When I first started looking into this, because I heard people ranting and raving, I mean, literally, ranting and raving. Oh my God, the situation is horrible. And taxes went up 2% before, and they're going up again, and the school system, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, it can't be that bad. And it's not. The problem is, if there's not transparency, that sends a flag that just ignites people's imaginations, and they start thinking the worst of everything possible. Transparency is one of the most powerful tools that an organization has to gain understanding of reality. So, all right.
Say you're a consultant, how much do you charge an hour? Maybe we need to hire you.
Don't mention money.
If he gonna save us, he'll save us enough, we can pay him to do it.
I just want to thank you. I think you've given us some tools that if we can just start implementing some of these systems, we can begin to see. I lived and had some friends die by how goes it chart on oceans with fuel and time. And big believer in following the numbers. I do agree with Gene that the supervisors over the 25 years we've been here have been have always been willing to listen. We didn't always end up on the same page, but at least they heard me out. And I think your earlier point is well taken. When you get support from the school board members or board of supervisors, a short phone call or a little letter saying, gee, I want to thank you for helping out or listening or whatever support I got goes a long way.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Madero, the economic development budget for 10-11 was 369, and for 11-12 proposed is 380.
That's just to hire consultants to tell them how to bring business into Franklin County, basically?
No, not really. We've got one guy that's what Mike does.
He doesn't make $380,000 a year, though.
No, he does. We're members of the Roanoke Allegheny Regional Planning and of the West Piedmont Regional Planning, and we've got members there on both boards. And what it is, it's a web page process that people put in what they want, what they need for their development, and where they want to locate. And you respond like that, that way. And you know, they ask questions about the community, what's available. They ask about police, fire, and rescue. They ask about education. They ask what else is there. They want to know if you have railroad sidings. They want to know if you have natural gas. They want to know if you've got, you know, what kind of infrastructure you have. It's all kinds. How far it is to an interstate, how far to an airport, and all kinds of things. There's lots and lots of stuff that's involved in that. Then in Franklin County, now I'll have to say, Franklin County has a site right now for industry that's already developed and ready. Roanoke City has two in the area, that's it. That is readily available to go. And yes, they ask for incentives. And those incentives, sometimes they're met, sometimes they're not. And it is a very competitive business, to say the least.
Absolutely.
Very competitive.
You know, Franklin County, compared to the surrounding localities here, compared to, we have a, what is it, 47 cent, is it 46 or 47 cents our current millage rate?
Went up to 48.
48, there you go, I'm underestimating. But Roanoke County is $1.10. Our schools are every bit as good as Roanoke County schools.
Not bad at all.
Yeah. So
Well, we got a different plan.
the message that I'd like to leave you with tonight is, hey, public involvement is absolutely necessary for good government. Local government, you can reach out and touch these guys. They're here. Some of them tonight, they'll be at that meeting. That's important. I think, don't be down on Franklin County that we're wasting money. I don't think that's the case. The point that I think John and I were trying to make was, we're into an environment now where we're not going to see as much federal help or as much state help any longer. That means it all rolls down to us. And we need to make sure that when it's doing that we need to be as efficient and as effective as we can be to minimize tax rate increases and to do more with less.
One other thing, Mr. Brush,
Call me Bill.
all right, Bill. Loudoun County, and I know you're well aware of them, 70-some thousand kids, building 5 schools a year, raising taxes, doing all that. But let me tell you how they function with their board. And it's one thing I've been trying to push, and it's one reason you don't hear a lot out of Roanoke and Salem, is because of the same thing. The county has a fund balance. They have carryover in each line item. The school is not allowed to do that. If there was a way that we can come together and have this contingency fund that you're talking about now, whether Bill's number is right or whatever we end up proving out, we'll know. But you know, let's say it's 2% of our budget, or let's say it's $1 million. In other words, what happens if we do have $1 million carryover, that goes into that budget. If the county's having a hard time next year and the school is seemed to level out, part of that money goes to the county, under the understanding that they'll, you know, when they get good years, they'll fill that money back in. And what that does, next year we're looking at losing job stimulus money, which is $1.6 million. We know we're down $1.6 million. So in my heart, I'm hoping you're right in your number tonight.
Right, exactly.
Because if you are, I know where I'm going to get it from.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
But if it's not in the number sort of where we think it is, then here we are again facing next year in a reassessment year. We're down $1.6 million. Do we cut more teacher positions? Do we cut more bus drivers? You know, what is it that we're going to do? So I would urge each one of you to talk to your supervisor and board of school board member to really push to try to work towards a contingency fund somehow for the school system, that when we do hit these rough years, that we alleviate and don't have to raise your taxes. You know, in other words, we can say, okay, we got it right here. We don't have to raise taxes this year. You know, that's the whole thing to look about. And what I'm getting from Bill and them tonight is that, you know, we have cut back a lot. The school system has cut back a tremendously lot. Now, could we get insurance costs a little bit less? Could we do this a little bit less? And joining governments is a beautiful thing. Health insurance plans, we don't share. We don't share director of transportation. We don't share director of finance. You know, there is a lot of things. So coming from this school board member, at least, you know, it's a lot of things. If anybody's kept up with my career, I have asked for. But those are the type of things that we got to look at. Just like you broke the dollar up within our 64%.
That's right out of the county.
I know. Well, I've seen that's the reason I passed it on down. But out of that 64, we also break that dollar up from the school system and say, here's our biggest bang. Here's our biggest bang. And we've hit a lot of those. And we are getting back to the days. I went to graduate in 1987. We're getting back to the days of classroom numbers of those days, which isn't good because the kids today are asked so much more than what I was when I went through school. And we can't get back to those type of numbers. So, you know, I love the input, but, you know, hopefully through more information, through it all, we'll see what the school board comes up with. We'll see expenditures are going to be a lot more transparent. We'll know that a little bit earlier on. I think we will even know it. So, you know, hold your ground. Continue to email us, call us. I'm a 629 number, so if you look for me up in the Franklin County book, I'm not in it. I'm in Henry County book. So, you know, that's just where I live. But that's just one thing I would really like to push as a school board member and you community people. Give us a contingency fund to help absorb a lot of these years that are really bad, and we won't see as many tax increases as what's there. That's my little spiel.
Let me add to that. What I have found out since getting into this is that a lot of the reason why classroom sizes are getting bigger is because not of anything that Franklin County's done, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but because of state and federal requirements and caps on the special students. You have special students that are amazingly smart, and they get special programs. You have special students that are very poor, and they get special programs. And you have special students that have learning disabilities, and they're very special. But there are imposed caps on how many, what the student-teacher ratio is, and that, my understanding, has been going up through the years, and that's one of the things that's driving these costs up. Because that is driving teaching inefficiency in a way. Now, I'm not saying that these caps aren't reasonable, because there are some kids that need just a whole bunch of attention, and other kids that don't need it as much. But what that's doing is, again, it's the old 80-20 principle. The 80% of the kids that are in the middle are getting screwed. Yeah. They're getting the short end of the stick, and that's not right either. But that's not something that the county can work on. That's what you need to go to your politicians and get the state and the federal government to work on and recognize, hey, whoa, cut this out here, wait a minute. This is overboard.
I mean, I had a conversation, you remember when I addressed the school board, and you gave me that survey. I had seen that survey, and I said, this is good things about Franklin County. We're getting a lot of bang for our buck, how we spend our money on education. And I had a conversation with the secretary, or representative of the Secretary of Education in Virginia. And I asked a simple question. I said, you know, you got this formula that says if you got 300 students in a school, you need a librarian. If it's $2.99, you need a half a librarian. Right. Or you need a half a guidance counselor. 300's a magic number. You got to keep these class sizes this way, this way, this way, this way. You have to fund that. You have to meet these standards of quality. That maybe a bad Dr. Lackey chokes on that every time he hears standards of quality. But I asked, I said, well, do you have any data? You've got this detailed prescription on how we're supposed to run our schools. Do you have any data on how effective that is? And the answer was no. So I wrote him back and I said, if you don't have any data, why the hell don't you just give us our damn money, let us spend it the way we want to spend it, because we know our schools better than you do.
That's right.
And you know, you get this blank stare. I never got an answer to that.
No, and you won't.
Yeah. But that's where we can use guys like Poindexter, we can use guys with Senator Stanley. These guys all believe that, you know, we don't need this type of over-regulation. We need to do things common sense. And believe me, if there's one thing Franklin County's got, it's got common sense.
And that's one of the things that we can do. We collectively, if we focus on looking for ways to improve our efficiency. And maybe one way is to go completely outside of the Franklin school system and go to the state and raise these issues. And get your representatives to support you and pass legislation that says, hey, there's enough of this. Let's do it this way. You know, again, I'm not standing here tonight telling you that I got answers. I don't. All I know is that I have methods. And there are methods to find improvements. And if you ever wonder whether those methods work, I'm going to leave you with a quick little story, and then I guess we'll kind of turn the meeting over to whoever wants to say what. But back during World War II, the United States was in a real bind because we needed to win the war, World War II. And we weren't prepared when that war started and when all the animosity started. And we had to build airplanes like they were going out of style. And there was this guy by the name of Deming and Duran and some of these other quality gurus that some of you may have heard of. And they went into the aircraft companies and they showed them how to ramp up their production to unheard of levels and yet bring the quality up at the same time. And we started putting out airplanes and other pieces of equipment, but airplanes in particular, that were superior design, superior construction, that did the job and blew Japan and the rest of them out of the water. I mean, you know the end of the war. Well, guess what? After the war was over, Duran and the rest of them went to the U.S. manufacturers, General Motors and Ford and Chrysler, among many others. And I'm familiar with the automotives because I came from Detroit as an engineer. And they said, okay, we know more than you do. That's all right. What did Japan do? They said, come here. Hey guys, how'd you do that? Come here. And you've seen the results of that. That's not magic.
Okay, why don't we go back to moonshine?
The sheriff's in the house.
Who said we ever stopped?
Eric,
So anyway, that's
get
all
Yule's
we have
reaction
to
to
say.
that.
I did.
If we can solve any other, or make any progress by standing here and talking, that's fine with me. I don't want this to turn into a complaint session, because that doesn't help anyway. Whining doesn't get you answers. Yeah.
I just hope we don't go away thinking this was exclusively school board. I really like what you were talking about, efficiency within the county government
Absolutely.
as well. And I think this county is pretty well run, like I think our school system is pretty well run. But this chart says a lot, and I see Sheriff Hunt came in, and this is a rural county, and just from public safety, I know he's squeezed awfully hard with the same kind of federal regulations. At nighttime, don't expect a deputy to show up right away, for example. So, you know, it's the school system eats a huge amount of the budget, but it's the rest of the county as well. And I appreciate all that you guys did.
Thank you. And this was focused on the school system because it was the school system budget questions that started this whole thing. And as I said, I was expecting to see some real problems. Well, there are problems. But the school system is run pretty well. I mean, anytime you've got an organization that's consistently under budget, that's a whole lot better than an organization that's running over budget.
Well, they're well incentivized for that.
And I don't
real well.
I don't want this to come across as a let's just beat the crap out of the school system. It's what it is times are changing, folks, and we better get with it, or else we're all going to pay for it.
Well, the problem is our money's drying up. The taxpayer money is drying up.
Everybody's money's drying up.
Standard & Poor's shot up, gave us a real shot across the bow.
Oh, yeah.
That's what's coming, maybe a year from now, but it's coming.
Prediction June 12th.
It's
Bottom
coming.
fall down.
In case any of you don't know what.
John, it's not that.
You need to talk to my wife after this. Old connections from way back. In case any of you don't know what John just mentioned, Standard & Poor's today issued a new,
Unsuitable, or no, unstable, I think was the rate, a new
I
rating on the
knew-
dollar.
Yeah, but they're right.
directive. They said that the US government debt has gone from neutral
Too negative.
to negative. That's the step that
It's saying
precedes,
don't loan them any more money.
that's the step that precedes a downgrade in the debt. I don't know if any of you have follow rural financing or not, but that is a very, very bad situation.
It's like
And
going
oh,
from
by the
triple A
way,
to C.
the head of PIMCO Bonds, which is one of the biggest bond traders in the world, sold all US debt. He said, I have to be prudent to my investors, and I will no longer carry US debt, just because this country is on shaky ground right now. And, you know, again, I'm not trying to be an
Would you
alarmist.
want to own any California bonds right now?
So anyway, we're finished. Thank you so much for coming.